what we mean by probability, that's kind of a, I guess you'd say, a fancy name for, it's just the likelihood of an event occurring. Probability is just the likelihood of an event occurring. And the example I like to start off with is if we flip a coin, what would you say what is the probability we get heads? So what's the likelihood we get heads? What would you say? 50-50, okay. Right that way. Anybody else think of something else? What's the likelihood of getting heads? Sometimes I get 1 out of 2 likelihood, 50% chance. Okay, all those perfectly fine answer to that question. Now, here's a little more on that. So, yeah, let's focus on this. Usually the way this is written, just some notation here, P for probability, and then we can put, kind of a description of what the probability is we're talking about. So probability of heads, we could represent this way. And usually the way the probability is written, the way we'll typically write it, is using a fraction. And so 1 out of 2, that's a pretty good indication here that the fraction here, the probability of getting heads is 1/2. And it's simply because, yeah, there's 1 heads on a coin, and then there's 2. Why is it 2? Well, there's two possibilities, yeah. And that kind of describes, definition-wise, what probability is. There's 1 head, so that's, sometimes we could describe it just in general. That's a successful, in this case, the successful outcome was getting the heads. And then the 2 possibilities was, the total number of possibilities there are. Now, what about these others? Well, how these others fall in is if you actually divide 1 divided by 2, what do you get? 0.5. All right, and so what is that in percentage? Move the decimal point 2 places back, that's 50%. Okay, so the probability of heads could also be described by using a percentage, using a decimal. It's all interrelated. It's all the same. Okay? So keep that in mind. We're going to use, for now, we'll use some of these others later, but we're going to use the fraction form of our probabilities to describe probability. So let me just kind of give a definition. So the probability of event E here's the way we can describe that. Probability of E equals, all right, so it's a fraction. So what goes on top? Well, in this case we had 1 heads. That was the successful outcomes. So the top here is the number of successful outcomes. Successful with regard to event E. And then the bottom number, well, the bottom number is just the total number of possibilities. All right? So that's our definition, if you will, of a probability of an event occurring. All right, so let's just do some others as examples here. Oh, yeah, well, okay. Let's do two coins. So 2 coins are flipped. Number 1, what is the probability both are heads? All right, so sometimes they get a little more complicated. This one's not too complicated, but it's a good example to show you some other things. All right, so here, all right, so this one's a little more complicated, right? We've got 2 coins being flipped, and so there's more outcomes. There's more possible outcomes here. So one way we can get at this is, let's think about the outcomes, the possible outcomes, and just another term for you. The outcomes possible, that's also sometimes referred as a sample space. So let's list out here our sample space, or S, sometimes they may just call it S. What is our sample space? Well, we're flipping 2 coins, all right, and so we could get both coins heads, so heads, heads. We could have both tails. What else? 1 heads, 1 tail. So we could have 1 heads, 1 tail. Now, here's the thing. Again, kind of like we did with some other things we've talked about, I think maybe dice before. The order kind of matters here because this is heads on the first coin, this is tails on the second coin. So if I had tails on the first coin, heads on the second coin, that's different. So tails, heads is going to be different. And so that's our listing of the total possible outcomes here. And that's very helpful here because, now, well, so what's the probability both are heads?
4.
Yeah, now we can see the successful outcome is there's just 1 of them. And then the total number of outcomes, yeah, we got 4. So 1/4, 0.25, 25%. You could see it those other ways, but like I said, they'll typically give you their fraction. Is that all right? Question concerned? All right. Now, on number 2 here, let's see what happens here. What is the probability exactly 1 is heads? So what is the probability exactly 1 is heads? Let's call it that. Well, exactly 1 is heads. That one's not exactly 1 heads. That one's not exactly 1 heads. It's these 2 on this one, isn't it? There's 2 of them that have exactly 1 heads out of 4. Right? Good with that? Now that brings up the point, this is a fraction, so guess what they're going to want to do? Reduce it, yeah. So we reduce that down. So we've got 1/4, so we can reduce those both by 2, divide that by 2, divide that by 2. And so that probability turns out to be 1/2 or 50%, 50% as well. Okay? Any question or concern on that? Now here's, and we can ask a lot of things, a lot of different ways, but just kind of give a small little sampling here of some of the ones that we could possibly get here. Let's say, all right, so this one's kind of different. Let's say I've got two 2 spinners. And to form a 2-digit number. And here they are. So they're equally sized parts here, and the first one's got 1, 2, and 3. So that's our first spinner. Put a little arrow on there if you want to. Got a little spinner there, and then we got a second spinner. It's got 3 different numbers on it, 4, 5, and 6 on it. All right. So this is the first. This will be our first digit, and this will be our second digit. So we've got a spinner. 2 spinners. We're going to spin those once each time to get a 2-digit number. All right, so here's the question. What is the probability the number is greater than 25? Greater than 25. Well, again, a more complicated thing, and so might be a good thing here to write down the sample space. What would be the sample space in this particular case? What possible numbers could I get here? Well, this would be the first digit, so I could roll spin a 1 here. And then any of those 3 over there, so 14, 15, 16. Kind of do it in an order. All right, then over here I could spin a 2, and then 4, 5, or 6, so 2, 24, 25, 26. And then 34, 35, 36. All right? With me there? We all agree on that one? Okay. So that's our sample space. So now we can figure out, all right, so what's the probability that we've got greater than 25? Well, which numbers over here are greater than 25? Well, the first few aren't. 25 is not greater than 25. So these 4? Yep. So we got 4, and then, again, this is the deal about probability from what we've been doing is this is going to be a fraction. And so what's the bottom part of the fraction here? Well, it's just the total number there are, right? 9?
Yeah.
Okay? So that's basically the process of doing these things. All right? Any question or concern about so far what we've done?